Hello, and welcome to the Mother Architect podcast. My name is River, also known as Rachel, and on this podcast, I like to explore the cross-section of the Venn diagram of science and creativity and spirituality. And if I had a visual for that, it would look a lot like the symbol on my microphone, which I will show you. There it is. I really like that symbol. On today's episode, we have Tia Michelle returning, and we had a phenomenal chat. We discussed so many different topics, from consciousness to identity to manifesting, and we also go into quite a bit on Taylor Swift, which you'll have to listen to find out what exactly we talk about. It was such a fun episode. I always learn so much from Tia. And I also wanted to make a quick note that there are a couple of moments where Tia's camera cuts out. I think it's a glitch with the recording software that I used. But other than that, it's a great episode. And her video is up for most of it. So it's only a couple of spots. And yeah. I hope that this episode meets you where you're at. I hope that you learn from it. And if you are someone who is in a spiritual growth mindset, I think you'll get a lot out of this episode. All right. Without any further ado, enjoy. Well, welcome again, Michelle. And it's
Hi there, Rachel.
Exciting to have you back after quite a whirlwind of a last month or so for you.
Right.
You've been in the Colorado fires, and we were just talking a little bit about that. How has that been? How is it going? How are you feeling?
So, I live in, you said it, I live in Colorado. So, and California, Colorado, lots of places, it's natural to have fires. Other places have water or tornadoes or hurricanes or whatever, and we have fires. Part of it's because we're super dry and we're mountainous. And part of it is because we don't do what the Native Americans did forever, which were called firelighters. And they would go with a little can, like it looks like a little blow can. It's like got a little drip of fire on it. And they would go in a line and they would burn controlled brush and what's called ladder. So, taller brush and under story stuff. And they would manage the wild areas of the world better. So lightning is a thing, and it's an energy field. And literally, I saw the lightning strike. I back up to about 10,000 acres of wilderness, which is an incredible blessing. It's now totally burned to a crisp, and it's just black sticks sticking up. But the generation that'll happen in 2 years is going to be amazing. And we haven't had a controlled burn. So when the fire started, and people thought it was put out or whatever, it's mostly oak here, like the scrub oak, and that just holds fire. It's one of the reasons it's great to heat your house with. So I would see it go down and I'd be like, okay, this is good. And then it would go back up the next day and I'd be like, that's not good. And it's not about a good or bad. I really want your people to hear this. It's about a natural process that I happen to be in the way of. I live out in the country. Most people don't live out here. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
So when I saw it come up again, and then it made a left-hand turn, is what I call it. So it's about 3 miles from my house. I knew that I was the next object. Let me put a shout out to all firefighters and people who do wildland fires. Y'all are amazing humans. And I know you're away from your families a long time, and I know you don't get to shower, and you get to eat really well, which is great. But you are doing a 16 to 20 hour day every day, except for the time you have off. And you're saving people like me and my life and what I have put into this space and place that God brought me to. And I am eternally grateful. So even when the fire was coming, I was still in really amazing grace and gratitude, because I know I'm part of the problem. I'm on the earth. I'm using resources. I'm using water. I'm trying to manage things really well. I grow a lot of my own food in a lot of ways. I try to be less of a carbon footprint, and it's not enough. We're just in the time that, I'm glad I'm doing that, but is it enough? Probably not. But if we all do it in our own little ways, it might be enough. And so I literally had to take my entire farm out, which is goats and chickens and ducks and bunnies and it's a thing, and dogs and cat and all the things. And I don't have a trailer. So people came and helped me who were astonishing. People I don't know came to help me. And then
Mhm.
I went to a friend's house and her neighbors opened everything. And I had a chicken coop and somebody set up a motorhome for me to stay with my dogs and cat and all the things. So the grace was there. And that's the piece I would want to invite your people to know is even when it looks really terrible, and I mean, it looked really terrible. Like my house was surrounded 360 by about 50-foot flames.
Mhm.
It should have burned. I mean, all rational thought. And the firefighters were amazing. They did a backfire with some of my lawn furniture, which was great. And they just fought for the structures, not knowing who lived here.
Mhm.
Um, they risked their lives because there was only one way out once the fire surrounded them.
Yeah, that's insane. And how
Well,
long has this whole ordeal lasted? It
so
started.
they were, I think it was August. I don't know what day it was. It's 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks ago. So, like a Tuesday or something, I evacuated, I think, on a Wednesday. And then I had to evacuate from in town the next day because the fire was just going everywhere and it was jumping over rivers and roads, which it does.
Yeah.
And they just did an amazing job. I mean, all the people that managed it were incredible. And we needed the burn. We
Yeah.
did. There's probably a lot of people who would disagree with me or wouldn't like it or would have their own opinion from a quarterback chair perspective who's not in a fire truck. And I'm okay with that. I mean, everyone gets to have their opinion,
I mean,
but
it
the
is a
fire,
part of the natural cycle of what happens on this planet. It's just what
yeah.
happens.
And I'm a part of it, and you are, and everyone here. That's what we came to experience. So about, I'd say 3/4 of my land that I'm the steward to. It's not really my land. It's Spirit's land, God's land. But I take care of it, burned like to a crisp. And now there's this beautiful green sprouting that's happening. So I had two, I mean, there's a lot of things to the story, but I had a pear tree and a cherry tree who were absolutely in the burn, like just burned to a crisp. And they're regenerating and coming back, and there's green coming out of the trunk all the way around. I don't have an explanation for that other than spirit and my conscious contact with it, because literally they should have died.
Yeah. I was talking with our mutual friend and she
Uh-huh.
showed me pictures of your trailer next to one of your neighbor's trailers.
Right.
And it's so interesting because your neighbor's trailer, just like a few feet away from yours,
Incinerated.
incinerated, and yours is completely fine. And
100%. And it was 10 inches apart.
you
And
know,
it was
you
completely surrounded by fire. Everything else is burned. The tires burned, the floor burned, the contents burned, all of it burned. And my tires are fine. Literally, they were parked this far apart.
yeah.
And he said, "What do you think that is?" And I said, I don't know, because I'm not going to hurt his feelings. But I
Yeah.
really do think that faith and prayer and alignment with the light is where our power lies. All of us, not just
Absolutely.
me. 7.5 billion people have this.
Yeah, I can imagine it's an offensive thing to say that spirit was protecting your trailer.
And that
Um,
is, I mean, that's
and
just so rude.
and some might interpret that as like, oh, the spirit was looking after God is protecting you, but not your neighbor. But I don't think that's really the point of what you're saying. You mentioned the nature of reality and how our faith interacts with the nature of reality, and how we're given permission to wield our consciousness in a way that says, Spirit, protect these structures. My heart is to care for the land and to be a healer and to be a healing conduit in humanity.
Mhm.
I invite that protection over the land. And
And I align to it. Like
mm-hmm,
I make my brain, my thought process consciously aligned to it, no matter what it looks like. And it looks
mm-hmm,
really bad. I mean, people were like from town, and my neighbors were absolutely certain that everything I had burned to the ground because it was an inferno. And I get it, and I don't quote from the Bible because people misquote the Bible all the time and they use it as a weapon, which I don't think that's the entire point of it.
mm-hmm,
Jesus said, "You can do what I do and more." This is the more part.
mm-hmm.
And it's not I'm special or I have a special thing and nobody else has it, and I'm going to sit on my little high horse and do this. That's not how it works for me at all. It's about my humility and my willingness to submit my will
Mm-hmm.
to this energy and be a conduit for that. And I think all of us can. I think that's what telepathy is about. I think that's what's happening in the telepathy tapes with the kids,
Yeah.
adult people who don't speak. And we just miss it. It's like
Yeah.
right under our nose. It's like right here, like the telepathy tapes for anybody who's scrolling on YouTube. It's right here under your nose. And people go, "Oh, I don't know." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
just listen to the whole thing. I mean, really. And you're no different or more or less special. And we totally have this whole questionable attitude about people who are differently wired than we are, and then decide their value based on our ignorance.
Yeah. Well, I think about past times
Oops.
in my life. Oh, everything all right?
Yeah, I just dropped you.
I think about in past seasons of my life, I have lived in anxiety, anticipating and imagining the worst possible scenario or the worst possible outcome. And that was how my nervous
Right,
system was trained. That
right,
was what I witnessed in my early childhood. That's how I
right.
witnessed adults dealing with problems. And wouldn't you know it, almost every negative thing I imagined came to pass. And
Big energy.
there
Big
was a
energy attracting
moment
big energy.
last year where I had, which I've shared a lot of it with you, a spiritual awakening. And I realized how much our own individual realities are interwoven and have an intricate relationship with our imagination and our thoughts, which is what telepathy is. And so if you believe telepathy is impossible, you will never see it. And if you believe something is possible, you will see it. And I have put that into practice in my own life. And it's been difficult because, as you know, as someone who works as a healing conduit, rewiring and healing and reframing, uh, that takes a lot of work. It takes a long
Because
process. It's like gardening. You're regrowing neural pathways. You're healing the nervous system. And, as you talk about this experience that you've just gone through, which for most people would be deeply traumatic, even with the best case scenario, and you seem to be handling it really well, it's a deeply unsettling for the system. And yet you have moved through it so gracefully.
thank you. That's very kind for you to say. It's a choice, and we're choosing all day long, every day. Am I going to be rough with the person that I love because I had a crappy day at work? Am I going to blame someone because I need some sort of weird accountability from another human about whatever is happening to me?
Mm.
Am I going to see things as destruction or opportunities for growth? We make those choices all day long, every day. When we get a bad pap smear, when we get, or a questionable pap smear, even, it's usually a questionable one if you're taking care of yourself. You know, what do you believe about you that is an attractor for other things? And how are you going to use the consciousness that you have to actually unfold more nurturing opportunities?
Can I ask you, what do you mean by consciousness? This is a huge, big word right now.
It
It
is.
means so many different things to so many different people. And
Does.
while I don't think we'll ever fully be able to define what that is, I'm curious what your experience of consciousness is and how you would put words to it.
It's all of it. What we know is conscious is not out here or in here. It is like the liquid energetic that we get to play in and we get to manifest in and we get to create in. And there is really not a really good definition of it right now. The best ones I've heard are from Deepak Chopra, which say things like, it is the pure energetic of what all is made out of, and you're a part of that. I'm a
Yeah.
part of that. Everyone's a part of that. Everyone who's listening is a part of that. Dolphins are a part of that. Praying mantises, all of it is a part of that.
Hmm.
And then it's how you interact or play with it that creates whatever is next. One of the things I noticed, very much like what you just said, Rachel, is that, when I would think negative thoughts, they would freaking come true so fast it was ridiculous. And I would be like, so if I can do that, hmm, what happens if I turn my
Yeah.
brain 180 degrees
Yeah.
and use it for good or light or consciousness or whatever I wanted to think about it as? And that, and literally now I'll think, oh, don't spill that milk that you're putting in the jar with the funnel, Michelle. And I'll spill the milk almost immediately. Like, that's fast. And I'm like, stop it, Michelle.
Yeah.
We're constantly attracting energy, and we're
Yeah.
constantly a part of an energetic in a relationship with your children, with schools, with family, with your own negative thought process in your brain that you're having hopefully an argument with on some level, or at least now you stop that and change it into something that's positive. And
Yeah.
then so one of the things I was watching, Marvel, because I love Marvel and sci-fi and all the things, and now they're doing a whole lot of work on multi-universe and entanglement, and actually illustrating it in the Marvel comic movies, which I think is so fascinating because that's really what we're all talking about right now.
Uh-huh.
Like, anyone who's paying attention is asking questions. What is consciousness? Where's memory? What are we creating? What are we not creating? All the things.
It's really
And
interesting that some people I've talked to almost identify consciousness and like multidimensionality as these fictional sci-fi
yeah,
concepts, but they're not.
they're not. They're just a way for us to be able to, and whoever's making these movies is brilliant because they're taking physics and quantum theory and
Mhm.
making it into something that's palatable that you can actually chew on and kind of understand while you're watching the thing, kind of from whatever direction you come from. And it's true. I mean, the people in India are in a different multi-universe than we are right now. And the people who are Indian by, birth in the United States, but they have so it's a first generation thing. A lot of times it's a first generation issue. with any group of people that come to another country. We would have it if we went to Vietnam, or we would have it if we went to China or wherever. We're between these two worlds. We really are between the two worlds. Like, we're not even making that up. That word world is not euphemistic. We're in a different state than the people that are in our school who are born in Oklahoma and raised in Oklahoma. And none of it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The Indian person who's in Oklahoma is not having the wrong experience. The people in Oklahoma are not having the wrong experience. They're just having really different universes.
Yeah. I heard someone say it like, however many people are on the planet, that's debatable. But it's as if there are 9 billion different worlds, because every single individual experience is its own world based on how we perceive and interpret and create our reality.
And what we filter it through, like what you were talking about in your family. You were raised in a very religious, strictly religious kind of way. Again, not wrong, just your experience, the experience of your family, and whoever got in that in the first place. And it's no different than someone who's a Methodist or someone who is um, an atheist. They have a certain, what I call is flavor
Mm-hmm.
of their reality that they're born into. And then, is that the one you want to pack the rest of your life? Is that your backpack that you want to carry the rest of your life, or do you want to unpack it? I'm Latin, so was raised in Mexico City, and I clearly saw two different universes in my household, between my parents. And then when I go to school, and I'd be in a Catholic school, there was a third universe. And at the time, I just didn't know what I didn't know because I was a kid. But now I see it as me having tastes and flavors of these different universes to see how I conglomerate it in here in the me part.
You know what? You somehow ended up
Hang on.
sideways.
I know what happened. Here we go. There we go.
Okay, cool.
Somebody tried to call in. Um, and it's that piece of, like, that interruption just now. Are you going to be distracted? Am I going to be distracted by it? Are we going to, but there's all that all the time. Your kid's not doing good in school. Someone calls you or sends you an email. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to handle it? How are you going to handle it with your kid? Is this going to be a problem, or is this going to be a growth opportunity?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to check yourself to see how you handle stuff? If you're not handling things as well as you think you should or would, or 37-year-olds do, or whatever goes through your head, right? It's part of your own universe. And is that the defining piece of who you are? With the fire, I've been through all kinds of earthquakes and tornadoes and hurricanes and all the things because of the places I've lived. And this fire could define me. And am I going to have that happen? Or am I going to see it as an opportunity for what it is, which is to me be in nature,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that nature has a natural process. I'm the one in the way of that natural process because of where I live. And then am I going to join nature and this natural process and blend? Or am I going to be a problem?
I'm thinking about everything that you're saying and just processing it as you're speaking, and kind of I can't help but think of what I've been going through in the last few weeks and think about my own life and things that relate. And as I'm trying to grow and understand what consciousness is, and as I've been expanding my awareness, I think a lot of being a conscious person and working with consciousness is being able to zoom out and expand the awareness of there's me, the I'm kind of an autonomous perceptual anomaly because I have this universe of experience through this vessel, and I'm also here on a living breathing planet that has its own rhythms, and I am part of those rhythms.
In its own
And
consciousness.
yeah, in its own consciousness, and we're all a part of it. But
Mhm.
the ability to have a humble perspective and to know, like, this could be the end of something. This could even be the end of my life. But rather than agreeing with that narrative, I'm going to remain calm, and I'm going to use my imagination, use my mind, and wield my emotions in a way that materializes the outcome that I desire. And it is not necessarily a selfish
Yes.
desire, it's working with the system and what the system is.
Well, and
Um,
it's an interesting word that you just brought up, Rachel.
System.
That's fabulous. Well, systems are interesting because they're just created by our own belief system. They really don't have anything to do with anything else.
Mhm.
But the understanding that you can be a part of, and we are a part of. I mean, we're electromagnetic beings on an electromagnetic planet, period, end of story.
Mhm.
And everything has energy. The trees do when you do thermals on them and you cut a leaf, you still see the energy. That's true of animals, plants, all things here. Are you going to join it or are you going to fight it?
Yeah, I think a better word would be the word that's used in the Bible for Jesus, which is logos, which just
Mhm.
means the divine order, not
Mhm.
necessarily any kind of human defined or created system, but the divine created order, all that is God, source, consciousness. I think that's
And
a
we're a
better
part of it.
word.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's what the entire point of all the religions talk about. You're a part of it. So how do you want to participate?
I had a few, what was it, a week ago? I think it was a week ago. I was having a really off day. I was in one of the most difficult parts of my hormonal cycle, and I decided to go get a cup of coffee, go for a drive. And on the drive, I was really duking it out with my thoughts, kind of being pulled back into a lot of those old thought patterns of, like,
Mhm.
nobody's gonna help me. I can't do this by
Mhm.
myself. Like, what's it gonna take to get the help that I need? People in my life who were supposed to help me and supposed to steward me and guide me and take care of me, they didn't do it, and now da 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 da. It's
Mhm.
is it always going to be like this? And I was just looping in those circles. And
Mhm.
then something kind of welled up in me, and it's like, no, wait. We don't do that anymore. And we
Good
know that
job.
those thoughts don't work. So if you want that to be true, keep saying that.
Mhm.
And there was a point in your life where that was true and you were tricked into thinking that that's your reality. But that's
Right.
it might not have been your fault at the beginning, but as I continued agreeing with those narratives over and over again, that's just the cycle in my life that I've been through
Right.
over and over again. I have a difficult relationship with the term victim mentality because as a child, the first time someone told me, you have a victim mentality, I'm like, well, that's because victims tend to have victim mentalities. And unfortunately, it can become a self fulfilling prophecy and a cycle if someone doesn't learn how to shift those mental processes. And so, in that moment, I reminded myself of something that I've written down in order to remember for moments like that. And it's the help that I need will come exactly when I need it.
Absolutely.
I get to the coffee shop that I was headed to, and one of my good friends was already there waiting, and perfect tables on the busiest day lined up. We got to sit next to each other, and we just got to talk. And this friend challenged me on some of my toxic thinking, or some contradictions in my thinking, rather. And then he's like, "Let me take you out to lunch. I'm going to take you out to lunch. I think you just need to be outside." And we went and sat by a turtle pond and had some lunch. And turtles are kind of a synchronicity for me, which is really interesting. But it really is our thoughts, our imagination that play into reality. And we can, it's fine to be skeptical and cynical, but the skeptic can say that it's all just random probabilities and possibilities. But it's so interesting how my life has really changed over the last year since learning to identify those moments of the uh, negative thought loops and to change it and say, no, this is what's going to happen. I'm not allowing those thoughts to take form anymore, because thoughts are things. It's like you said, it's how telepathy works. Telepathy is just connecting to the greater field of consciousness.
And then manifesting it into concrete reality.
Yeah, and I think
Through your thoughts.
manifesting has become kind of a cheap word, I think, because it's used in pop culture now, like manifesting, and it's fine. People can use whatever word they want. But I'd love for you to get into what it means to manifest reality, or what even is reality as you perceive it.
So it's your own decision about how you're going to show up, I think, is how I would define reality. Are you going to be the cynical, skeptical person? And not that there isn't things to be skeptical about on the planet Earth. I mean, this is the planet Earth, and we are in third dimension. And then is that going to be what defines you? Is that who you think you are? So I was raised Latin Catholic culture, kind of oppressive thinking in a lot of different ways. And I came from a family that was reasonably dysfunctional. And that was great, because at the time you could have told me that was great and I would have just told you to jump off a bridge. But, like I was 20, whatever, 18. It's, is this who you think you are? When we get pushed against something, like my family of origin, for instance, is that who you are internally, in the depth of your soul? Is that really what you believe? And that's a yes or no question. And if the answer is no, then you have to go investigate what. And if the answer is yes, and then that's going to make you a good person, that's great. You should follow that. I'm not here to define it for anyone else. We're all defining it for ourselves, because we're all souls that incarnated for this definition. And we picked things in our lives to push us or to grow us in some way. And that's true for everyone on the planet Earth. So my reality is my consciousness, my mindfulness is another big word. But what's great is these words, the manifestation, the consciousness, the awareness, the mindfulness, are actually becoming household words for most of the world, which is great, because it's so much better than us just accepting whatever's dished out, like we're being force fed like geese. What do you think? What do you believe? How do you believe it? And how are you going to do that? So people who really have a gift, whatever the gift is, if it's music, if it's, and I study a lot about music because I love music. There's a guy named Jacob Collier, and also everyone knows Taylor Swift. Jacob Collier is neurologically, I'm pretty sure, different. And his ability to play an incredible amount of different instruments is astonishing. There's another percussion instrumentalist. She's deaf. How she hears is through her body, through vibration. You and I can do it too, Rachel. Your audience can do it. We just have to put enough energy towards it. She has the largest collection of percussion instruments probably in the world. And she was part of who did the outer space music. She wasn't the conductor. The conductor is a different person for Marvel. And the way that she does the instruments and how she feels into them is her consciousness creating these sounds that are otherworldly. She can't hear, but
Yeah,
she
so
can hear.
it's
Yeah.
creativity turned tactile,
Well,
and incorporating the full sensory experience, but most of all, uh, the imagination.
right. And the awareness. she's deaf somewhere. Someone gave her a drum or a stick or something, right? And then she got it. And she's still getting it and developing it in some ways. And then we're connecting to it. We're the ones that are learning from her.
Mm-hmm.
It's how open are you to what's brought to you? And then that reality, you get to define it and you get to create it and you get to adjust the knobs on it, to
Mm-hmm.
fine tune it a little bit. And I think we all have that in us. I mean, I know people who have no education, who are brilliant, who can absolutely tell you more about cow calving than you ever could find in a book. It's it's appreciating all of us, and also it's appreciating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever gets in your way, why is it in your way? Is it what you want in your way? And if not, what are you going to do about it? And that's true for all of us all the time, everywhere. People who went to the Holocaust and wrote books about hope. They didn't live in an area that was filled with hope. And yet they reached in and found that in themselves.
Oh my goodness, that actually ties in a
Mm-hmm.
couple of things I wanted to mention. Um, you mentioned a bit ago about part of reality being who do you think you are. So I'm finishing up. I'm on the tail end of finishing up an album right now, and one of the
Mm-hmm.
songs, the very end of it is me repeating over and over again, "Who do you think you are?" Because it's quite confronting. Because you can use it as kind of a defensive response to someone like, "Who do you think you are?" And
Mm-hmm.
then there's also no, who do you think you are?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? And that question to me is so interesting because I don't think a lot of people actually think that they're allowed to determine who they are or allowed
Mm-hmm.
to sit in the driver's seat of their will enough to decide who they want to be. And that determines the entire
Yes.
trajectory of this experience.
Right. You have to get there somehow. You have to get to the who do you think you are with a gentle voice.
Mhm.
And a lot of times you get there from the, well, who do you think you are?
Mhm.
And then you go, well, blah, 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 blah. And then and then when you go off and you sit by yourself, you're like, well, who do I think I am? And
I
what is that? What am I going to create from that?
yeah.
And I have friends who talk about toxic positivity, which I think is hysterical. And there's people who they feel smooth over everything as opposed to giving a moment of what's going on.
Mhm.
And I understand that, but you're still operating from trauma. If you have to fight someone on their positivity, as opposed to just adopt it or let them be positive, and it doesn't really have any impact on your life in any way, shape, or form, what are you going to do with that? When I had to move all my animals, so it's 30 chickens, 6 bunnies, 2 dogs, a cat, and 6 goats, and I don't have a trailer. I literally had a lot of people that were willing to help me, which is incredible grace. And I had this one friend who I knew she had a place for my goats because that was sort of the defining place. It has to be big enough and whatever. And people I didn't know brought their trailers with her. We loaded all of my animals, which is a thing. And then I went to her block. I don't know any of her neighbors. They all opened their homes. There was a chicken coop that was available that was empty that my ducks and chickens could go and work it out together. There was a place for the bunnies and there was a place for the goats. And then one of her neighbors, who I don't know at all, came up to me and said, we have a motor home. Would that make your life easier? So you could have your dogs and cat with you as opposed to in the car, and I'm in her house sleeping. And I said, oh my God, that would be so great. And they said, great. In an hour, they had filled it with water, made the bed, turned on the
Mm.
refrigerator, and had it ready for me. And there was a cat litter box.
Mm.
It is how I believe that was the piece that had me just saying yes and yes and yes and yes. And then these people just were being who they are, which is lovely and conscious and kind, which
Yeah.
most humans are all the time, unless you catch them on a bad day or they're having, they're in war or something. And even in those times, people are very kind. And it was just so seamless. It was just like the other world opened up for me. And then when we had to evacuate the next day, we caught her chickens too, which she has 30. So we're catching 60 chickens, things, and her animals and evacuating. And I knew I could go to a different place with her, which was awesome. And I decided to come home. And it's part of my creation.
Hmm.
Like I knew that that was a little sketchy as a decision, but I just couldn't run around with all this all these animals. And
Yeah.
and I had people who were like, "We'll get you a B&B and we'll get you the things." And I was like, "I'm going to sleep in the barn with my animals more than likely."
Aw.
So I can't go to a B&B because I need to have I need to make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
And it's just decisions that we make all day long. It's not I'm special. I really want people to get you are the power of your own universe.
Right. Yeah. If you're alive, if you have a mind, a
Breathing.
heart, a body, you have an energetic field, you're connected to everything. This isn't
Mhm.
woo woo. This is, you go to the doctor, they connect you for the EEGs or the EKGs. You
Right.
are electricity, you are energy.
You are that. I have a dear friend who has a very terrible disease that they're dying of, and they live in a nursing home. And when I go talk to her, it's the most inspiring because she says to me, I have to stay alive to be a voice for some of the people here who don't have one.
Mm.
And it's honestly the truth. And then she has found purpose because she's made that purpose and she saw the gap. She doesn't have any of the pleasures that we all rely on, like food or lack of pain or being able to have a drink or, wanting to check out and whatever people do drugs or whatever. She doesn't have any of that privilege. And she's an amazing light and she cannot move at all, physically can't move. It's a
Yeah,
choice.
it is really incredible. A lot of the non-speaking spellers, some of them are featured on telepathy tapes, many of them are not
Mhm.
because there are many of these people. Um, their parents and their families will often say just how kind and compassionate and understanding and selfless they are. They just want to help people, even though they've been denied for most of their life the basic comforts, the basic options that most of us have.
Right,
I think
right.
that's incredible.
And they get that this is a really important incarnation.
Yeah. Well, they have a stronger connection to the true nature of reality. Most of us are distracted by life noise and um,
TV and our shows and
yeah.
being mad at our boyfriend or girlfriend because they're not doing whatever we think they should be doing or whatever, as opposed to being grateful that you have a girlfriend or boyfriend who are not doing whatever and you thank them for that and then you move on to somebody else
Hmm.
and just, oh, okay, thank you, you showed me who you are. And I love that about you, and it doesn't work for me, and I don't have to make you wrong. I can
Hmm.
just do something else
So
because I have that option.
in your work as a healing conduit, do you have it like a title that you call yourself? I
I
would,
try not to call myself anything if I can
yeah.
help it.
Right. That's kind of where I'm at right now. You know a little bit of my story where my
Mhm.
TikTok kind of blew up. Now all of a sudden TikTok has a ton of censorship and most people in the spiritual community are not being shown in algorithms even to their own followers. But even before that happened, I started feeling really uneasy about trying to call myself anything in particular or trying to define what it is that I'm experiencing, because I think, like what you're saying, this is something we all have access to. We might all have slightly different roles, but I don't think that those roles ever stay the same or look the same for an extended period of time. It's not
We
like
don't.
our jobs here on earth where we go to college for one particular specialty.
Right.
We
All structured
learn.
up, and there's the 4 years, and you have to hit this mark on the freshman year and this mark on the sophomore year. Yeah, definitions are opportunities for people to put you in a slot
Mm,
because then they're comfortable with you in that slot, whatever that slot is. I try not to talk about it very much. What I tell people when they ask me what I do is I help you find your bliss. And if you're not where you need to be, then we figure out what that is. And from there, we build a map to where you can be in a different spot and be happy. People want to define me in lots of different ways. And I don't know that the who I am and also the gift of what this is definable necessarily. And because it always has some filter on it, right?
mhm,
If I'm a massage therapist, it has a connotation. If I'm a healer, it has a connotation. If I'm a therapist, it has a connotation. So I try not to talk about it at all. What I tell people in general is I'm a holistic therapist. I do lots of different things, and it comes through me.
mhm.
I never know what I'm going to show up to. When you show up in a session, I have no idea what's going to be happening.
I think
And I don't have to know. I mean, that's actually better if I don't know, because then it's pure and it's more the energetic of the oneness coming through me, as opposed to Michelle showing up for a session.
I think a lot of people right now are in a very difficult spot as they're more connected to technology. We are more connected to technology than we've ever been. We're being bombarded with negativity constantly. We are being fed these narratives. I almost see it like we all have an IV drip of these conflicting narratives, and things aren't adding up or making sense, and things feel hopeless. And at the same
Right.
time, those of us who are very spiritually in tune and connected to the greater field of consciousness, we know we're actually in the beginning of a very good time right now, and we're in the
Mm.
transition into transformation, healing. There is so much good happening that isn't being seen or highlighted right now. So for people who are wrestling with having to live in this society, this civilization, people who are having to live in the real world while also wanting to pursue expanding their awareness or wanting to heal. If someone like that comes to you, how would you help them work through that? What what kinds of conversations would you be having with them?
Where do they want to be? That's the first one. What do you see yourself? Because it's your incarnation. Where do you want to be? Like, and a lot of times people don't exactly know, right? And so then I'll say, yeah, okay, you're 80. It's ending ish. Now what? What do you look back on and wish you had done or not done or created or not created or whatever? And I think a lot of times we're just never allowed to be asked those questions or to even consider them. You know,
Mhm.
there's a pattern like, um, you know, you're supposed to marry maybe, and you're supposed to have children, and there's a lot of pressure for that. And is it who you are, and is it what you want to be? And that's your own call.
Yeah, so that kind of comes back to who do you think you are?
Who do you think
And
you are, and what do you think is better? And it may or may not be better. It may not be better. But if I get you there, or I help you get there, you at least know you can move.
mhm. So who do you
And
think you are? Who do you want to be?
yeah, and what do you think you came for? You know, did you come to be a part of a family? Great. Did you come to be a singer? Did you come to be a healer? Did you come to be a accountant? It doesn't matter. Those are all reasonable things. The question is, are you getting there? And if you are, is that good? And are you happy with it?
Mhm.
And if you're not happy with it, then what are you going to do about it? Because it's still your creation.
If somebody is deeply unhappy with their experience and deeply unhappy with who they are and they don't know what they want, what processes or I know you probably don't have any generic like
I really don't. Rachel, I really don't. I help you investigate what is making you unhappy and why, and what you think make you happy and why. And then we see whether we can connect those dots.
I'm starting to lose signal of you a little bit.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me come back to where I was.
It's
Um,
beautiful though. I'm
isn't it
really
pretty?
loving seeing everything.
It's so pretty out here. I'm actually looking for one of my dogs because he might have escaped.
Uh-oh.
He's kind of a little Houdini. Um, and he's not where he normally is, but it's also okay. He's here somewhere. Um, you know, part of what we don't allow humans to do is explore. You know, you're born in a gender, we have expectations about that gender. That's not true for transgender people. I mean, that experience is not true for them. You're born in a certain area of the world, and that has a certain definition of it. And is that the best idea? Do you want that definition? Is that something that really means anything to you? Um, there's so many expectations and pressures. If you're on TikTok, if you're not on TikTok, whatever. It doesn't let us be free as humans.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of media, social media, television, cinema, it exists to reinforce. There are a lot of
Mhm.
artists that break outside of that and they're incredibly
Mhm.
creative, but you have to find it.
Mhm.
But most of it exists to reestablish tropes
Right.
and certain cliques or personality types.
Right.
You're trying to give people personalities and
Right.
identities to
Right.
merge with. You can choose one of these things, but anything outside of these boxes is unacceptable.
Why? Why is anything outside of that box not acceptable?
That's where I've been in this past season of my life that's been about a year now. And it's so interesting to see in real time the reactions and responses to people, how uncomfortable people are once you start pushing outside of the mold and refusing to be pigeonholed.
Right.
We really are like, I mean, this is how I conceptualize it slightly, although I don't think there really is a perfect metaphor out there. But we are like actors. We get to choose the different characters we want to play, and the character I played yesterday might not be the same character I play tomorrow, but it's what I get to choose to be. And I get to choose how I want to play with it. But I think the key word is play. I think we're supposed to play and have fun. When I have my deep meditations and I go other places, this is what the higher beings tell me, and this is what
Right.
is communicated to me in my dreams. over and over
Right.
again. If you want to even look at it through the lens of traditional religions, which that's kind of a funny thing to say, widely the more widely accepted religions,
All Abrahamic,
all
all
Abrahamic
Abrahamic,
religions show a very
all one
creative God.
root, all one root,
Mm-hmm.
which is not bad. It's not a bad thing. It's just one root. Like we have the root of a pear tree, and now we're trying to grow apples and peaches and grapes and stuff. And is that going to sustain it? One of the things I'm really clear on is that play is such an important piece. They asked Ed McMahon, so this is for your older people. He used to literally drive up. He was on the Johnny Carson show forever, but he would drive up to do a commercial or whatever, get out of the car, step on the whatever, do it in one take, get the check, and get back in his car. Like literally, he'd come to do a commercial. It would take 2 minutes. He drove in, he did the commercial. They gave him the check. He drove out. And everyone said to him, how can you do that? And he said, practice. We're here to play. I was watching, so Taylor Swift is one of the people I'm studying in Jacob Collier right now. She went through a whole process. I don't remember how many hours it took to do the song, The Man. And she had herself made up as a man. It took 5 hours or 4 or something really crazy. And she's very believable. What on earth did that hurt? Like, what on earth? I'm sure people were offended or whatever. Why do you care? She's doing makeup. It's no different than her doing her hair in curls or up or in a ball gown, or she's wearing a t-shirt and shorts, and that makes you feel more comfortable. We're so interesting in the judgments that we make about a million things. And I remember when you and I met, and you weren't tentative, but you were like, okay, I'm going to give her this piece of information. And then I would be like, that's so cool, Rachel. That's awesome that you're having that exploration or that idea or whatever. We're at lunch. And then you'd give me another piece because I don't think you had met, other than our mutual friend, someone like me who was just going to be, that is the coolest thing. So tell me what that experience is like.
Yeah, it's mostly a recoil.
It's so interesting that people recoil from each other. We're already one. Boobs.
Yeah.
We are one energetic on the planet Gaia on a little tiny blue marble in the backwoods of the universes, of the galaxies, of the backwoods. I mean, we're like the neighbors that you have in your backwoods of somewhere that you're like, I don't know. I don't know if they got an education or not. I don't know. And we're fine. We're
Yeah.
here to evolve and develop. And people have all these ideas, like sometimes I get on things and people be like, I don't think there's aliens, or I think there are aliens, or I think I'm convicted that there are aliens everywhere, or there's never aliens, or what. One, I don't know that we're old enough as an evolutionary consciousness on the planet to really actually know. But if we were, that there's not more life in this amazing James Webb photograph of gazillions of galaxies, and that we're the most evolved is just the most ridiculous conversation ever. Seriously? Oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh. I hope there is. I hope there's a lot of it. I hope they're better off than we are. And I hope we don't screw this one up. Do your part to not screw it up, your own up. And, like with the fire, I'm going to do my part. As soon as the fire hit, I went and bought, I think it's 360 pounds or something like that of seed to reseed the grass.
Mm.
And people are like, it won't reseed and it won't. I don't believe that. Nobody believes my pear tree was going to live. So what do we know? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody believed my cherry tree is going to live. They were both blooming. They're coming through. They're doing great. I think it's a conversation that I have with my pear tree, my cherry tree. Other people might think it's just because, fire freaks them out or whatever. And then they start resprouting. Okay, but the scrub oak isn't yet. it's entirely your consciousness, your creation, your universe. How are you interacting with it? One of the things I tell people who have children is, how do you think your child feels after the last interaction y'all had? And that's the only thing you need to monitor. It doesn't matter what the conversation was. What matters is how they felt, either supported, loved, or cared for by you, or understood, or open to be able to converse with you, or not, depending on how you behaved.
Yeah, most people, I can say this is someone who's on the Claire spectrum of, clairsentient, clairvoyant, whatever you want to call it, and whatever, spiritually sensitive. Most people, and I learned this very early on, they don't care how perfect you are. They care about how you make them feel. And there might be outliers of people who are projecting onto you, but for the most part, people care more about how we make them feel than
Totally.
anything else.
Totally. And that's what you take. So there's a wonderful movie called The Moses Code. So it's a sequel to The Secret. So The Secret was based, it's a spiritually based movie, but it was really about manifestation of money. And it made a lot of people uncomfortable and felt like it didn't really cover manifestation very well. So then they made a sequel called The Moses Code. And the Moses Code is basically, you're born, so 1957 for me, and then I'll die somewhere, 2000 something. And it's the dash between those two numbers is my life, your life, our lives. What do you do with the dash? And I tell people, I also do hospice work in my own work, but also I volunteer here where I live. And I tell people, nobody's going to care if your toilet was so clean you could eat a soup bowl out of it. What they're going to care about is how they felt when they were in your presence. And so, I went to a funeral that really had an impact. The grandchildren were on the front row crying with teddy bears that someone bought them. I mean, and they were adultish, teenage, 20 something. And what they talked about for this guy was how much he loved golf. And I'm not a rabble rouser necessarily, but I told my girlfriend, who it was her father-in-law, I was one golf away from standing up and going, that is an inanimate object. Who cares? Because they never addressed those 5 kids. They never addressed his children because he did not care about them. And that wasn't lost on them. That's a terrible funeral. I
Yeah.
was just like, oh my God, get me out of here. And I've been to other funerals where it's standing room only, and all the people talked about is how that person made them feel when they were in their presence. And the hospice nurses show up, and the guy who cleans the floor in the hospital, who's lovely, shows up, and. I mean, literally, I went to another funeral, 3 different priests, ministers from 3 different churches fought over who was going to do the eulogy. And all 3 of them decided they were all going to do it. And literally, they went to the biggest church, and there was no room for everyone. We were outside, we were standing, we were in monitors because that person was fabulous. It's a decision. Who do you want to be? How do you want people to feel about you, or about their interaction with you, or about themselves around you? Difference between heaven and hell.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna bring it to that. I was just gonna say I really truly believe heaven is a state of mind, and
Mhm.
putting it simply, and hell
Yeah,
is a state of mind, and I've been in both.
absolutely.
And we can have it here on earth. When I was a child, one of my parents was part of a cult, and it was
Mm.
more or less didn't directly affect me. They had
So fortunate.
4-hour long worship services inside, which I thought the music part was so fun. They would do the whole like shake and bake on the floor. I loved it. I
Well,
loved
because music speaks to your soul. So you're like, All right, that makes sense to me. You're fully in it.
I
Great.
loved the singing and dancing, and they were very wild and full of the spirit, very charismatic type of
Mm-hmm.
Pentecostal stuff. It was led by a very uh, how would I describe her? Very flamboyant woman, larger than life personality, big blonde hair, big full face of makeup, very dominant personality style, as you have
Right,
to be a cult leader.
right.
And then after the worship, the kids would all get sent outside to play for hours, supervised by, maybe a teenager or a preteen. And I was little at the time. So, I would entertain myself by playing with the animals. They had bunnies, or I'd go outside under a bush and just dig in the mud and get filthy. And I remember the woman whose house this was all hosted at, she would be furious about how dirty I was. And now I look back and I laugh about how much trouble I would get into. And I'm like, the real service, the real heaven was happening in the moment that I'm in the mud, just completely engrossed in my imagination, not a care in the world. And, all the kids outside that were just cast outside so the adults could have whatever their spiritual time is. All of us kids are out there using our imaginations and bouncing on a trampoline, playing, and the real magic, the real heaven was happening outside. And the parents really should have been out there playing with their kids, which is where heaven would be. And the kids would
Totally.
remember
That
how that made them feel. All of the parables of Jesus talking about the vine and the branches, and it's really just talking about the nature of energy, the nature of life, the nature
right.
of our existence here. And I'm really starting to come into maybe even the most basic of understandings that heaven is a state of mind, that we have to choose every moment in this present moment to tune into.
You can do what I do and more. That's what that means. It doesn't mean um, worship me and act like an asshole 6 days a week. It means, who are you? Who are you to your children? Why are you in there listening to this other stuff? Why can't you all listen outside? Because the kids are going to be ignoring you anyway. And then interact with your kids. And, in a lot of places, kids are seen as an annoyance or a nuisance as opposed to a soul that actually picked you from the other side to be their parent and to incarnate in this earth plane to do something amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And that most parents worry more about civility than they do what you're doing is a loss. It's a loss for the parents, for sure. It's a loss for the kids, but the kids don't know. They won't know until later, if they're paying attention.
I think part of the brokenness of the plane that we're currently on, and the three-dimensional plane, is the losing the priority of the future generations and existing to serve and create a better world for children, for the
Mhm.
future generations, understanding that that's part of the collective experience here. We've been so focused on self-service, and we've been given other priorities that are distractions. Society and civilization as a
Mhm.
whole, we have all of these things where I see this great misalignment, which has created like a kink in the hose of where we're all collectively moving toward. And I feel like that's the false reality that a lot of people are stuck in, is thinking that their own experience is more important than future generations, or exactly what you said, not really understanding that this child you've been given that has chosen you, and that they are there to challenge you and to bring you optimal growth, whatever experience they have, whatever person they become. It's
Right.
all meant, it's meant for your growth as much as it's meant for them to have a parent to nurture
Absolutely.
them through this experience, you know?
Absolutely. And it's where we've really gotten off the beaten path on being a parent or being a good human with other children, or, why are you here? What's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Our wars are about resources. They don't really have anything to do with anything else. The Ukraine war is about the resources that are important to making cell phones. We're all a part of it.
Yeah.
And they're such a lighted group of people that they're like, we'll live underground until you come and kill us all.
Yeah.
Because we're not doing it the other way. We've already been through the bad stuff, which makes them formidable in the light. There's so many places, like my resources have something to do with what my godchildren will or will not have. How I handle this burn will have something to do with how this land will thrive. 225,000 acres, I think, burned, 400 miles of fencing, which is so interesting, right?
Wow. Interesting.
So interesting. And one, do we need the fencing? And two, can we all live with all the things roaming around everywhere? I mean, 400 miles of fencing it's a thing. It's going to take some time and effort and money and all the things. And, I think about those things. I live way out here. It's really lovely for me. I'm so grateful and fortunate. And I live where fire is. The people in New Orleans who went through Katrina, which was terrible, live in an area of the world that is 10 feet under the water level. Is that sustainable? You know,
Sustainability has been a really big topic for me. I think the word itself can be triggering for people depending on politically where people align. But it's an energy word. It's a word, in music. To have sustain is to hold out a note for an extended period of time. We want to be able to sustain life. We want to have legacy, not just the legacy of our story, our name, but the legacy of our being, our seed, our genes.
mhm,
And not all of us are having children, but yet maybe you're like me in this great sense of responsibility to the future of humanity that I feel. And
totally.
and we simply cannot sustain civilization at the rate that we're going on this trajectory.
Yeah.
And I think people are starting to wake up to that. And these conversations are a big part of it. Being conscious in every single small daily choice, what we consume with our eyes, what we consume with our
Mhm,
ears, what we put in our body and on our body, it all
mhm.
matters.
It does all matter, and we're all a part of it.
And just like with Jesus talked about what good is having, a cup where the outside's clean but the inside's dirty. We've been
Mhm,
focused on aesthetics and external representation, the what things look like. We've been so focused on curating an aesthetic and presenting an image to the world, but the priority is recalibrating and going inward. And I have so much hope that there is a shift happening. I mean, we all feel it. You mentioned, I think in our first conversation, that some of us are the crest of the wave,
mhm,
and we're like the foamy part at the top of the wave before it
mhm.
crashes, and it's a very chaotic place to be sometimes.
It is, because if you think of all of us as little beings on top of that crest of the wave, and we're like, it's not like we know exactly where we're going, but we need to know that we're a part of creating a path.
Hmm.
And then how open is that path? Does it include all beans, or only the ones you like, or the ones you feel comfortable with, or the ones that don't challenge you. What's great about the young people now for me, because I'm very fortunate to have a lot of them in my life, is they don't care. They care who you are inside, and all the external accoutrements or decor is what I call it. They don't care. They don't care if you had the biggest house and the brightest red Mercedes or whatever. They could care less. What they care about is who you are and how you show up, which is really all that matters when you go to that dash. The average funeral is 20 minutes to actually sum up your entire life. So whatever you think you're angsty about today or yesterday or last week or when I was growing up or, all the therapy I did or whatever, it's not even going to be in there. It's not even relevant. It is, how do I sum up in 20 minutes? What kind of an impact can I make that sums up well in 20 minutes? In 3 generations, even if I were to have my own children, which I don't, and the work really took precedence over that. But even if I was building a legacy of my children, in 3 generations, nobody knows who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. If I'm a murderer, that'll go on the list and it goes, in people's Bible or whatever. If I'm a good person, I'm just a energetic slate that's being laid under people's feet. And that should be enough for all of us because you can't control people from the grave. And I know people that do that. I know people who lock up their financial stuff before they die, that the family can't sell or do anything with anything for 350 years. I mean, I have someone who did that. And I was just like, what? How, really? And it's absolutely foolproof. They did it in such a way that is so legal that everyone's just going to have to wait 350 years.
So about 15 years ago, I was having many different prophetic dreams and these future dreams. And I had a very specific dream about things that are going on in the world right now. At the time, I remember trying to share it with some people in my evangelical Christian circles. And they're like, let's not talk about that. But it's happening now.
Itchy and uncomfortable.
And one of the things that I saw is what is going to happen to the people who try to clutch on to their belongings and clutch on to material things.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing that. We're seeing billionaires building bunkers.
Right.
We're seeing people try to build walls to protect themselves, mansions and castles. And I have the sense that we don't want to be caught up in the material game. It's part of the process and the journey here is the stewardship of the material, everything in the physical realm. But that is the last place that I want to be. And it's the last place that anybody should want to be. Kind of understanding energetically what happens to that kind of mentality or that kind of vibrational form.
Mm-hmm.
That gets destroyed because there's no place for it.
Right. And you just wind up in the lower frequencies.
Yeah.
Okay, we bury you with your Cadillac or with your BMW or whatever. All right. Good. How did that work out for the pharaohs? Not so well. It's just, we're so silly and focused on the things that are so ephemeral and not related to anything at all. A great opportunity for the people that are watching this is write down really for a week all your interactions, just short, doesn't have to be a big, long dissertation. And how do you think people felt? How do you think Fred felt when you talked to him in that tone? Whatever, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. How was it at work? What did your boss, your partner, your child, your dog feel? And then you can really start making some headway as to who you are and how you show up.
That's a great exercise. I think I'm going to do that this week.
It's really cool because then you start tracking the time. The other one that I like is track the amount of dread for an interaction and the time the interaction actually takes. I used to do that a lot. I used to have like 27 hours of dread for a 30-minute interaction. What a waste of life. Oh my gosh. Those 27 hours, you don't get them back. And you don't believe that you can actually do a 30-minute interaction for whatever. You're a difficult mom, your drunk uncle, your husband, you think you might work it out or get a divorce, your kid who needs to go to rehab. I mean, there's all these things. You can pick it up anytime and do that and then see how present are you actually in your life.
Something I've been working on as a recovering catastrophizer. Everything is a catastrophe, is just accepting everything as it is, and like whatever happens will happen and we'll deal with it when we get there. But I cannot
Oh,
control it before it's
yes,
happened. And I'm not going to waste, it's literally like wasting your energy. You're just wasting
100%.
life force.
And it's a friend of mine calls it leaking out of your bubble,
Yeah.
which I think is beautiful. And he doesn't care how you're leaking out of your bubble. Like, are you leaking good out of your bubble or bad out of your bubble or angry out of your whatever? You're just leaking,
Uh-huh.
and it's your leakage. So what are you going to do about it?
It's funny you bring up Taylor Swift. She's an interesting force on our planet. I don't quite understand her, but I am always endlessly intrigued by her, and she's very talented and highly intelligent, very imaginative. And
Mm-hmm.
I suspect that she's a lot smarter and spiritually attuned than people give her credit for. But she's also a celebrity
100%.
and nobody will ever really know.
She gets to have that privately in her world, and we don't get to dissect it.
Exactly. And she's smart for that. Very
Mm-hmm.
smart for that. But she was recently on now her fiance's podcast, New Heights, and that's where she announced her next album. And
Right.
she said something on there that I'm like, oh, she just casually dropped some of the best wisdom I've ever heard. She said, treat your energy as if it is the most expensive commodity. She's like, I could be in the headlines and it is none of my business. Whatever you spend your day focusing on or whatever you
Mm-hmm.
spend your day stressing out about, that's the day. The day is
Right.
gone. And
Right.
that, regardless of how anyone feels about her, that has stuck with me. And I've been thinking about that. Like, I want to have whatever kind of day I want to have. And just because they're trying to make it my business,
Right.
however they feel about me isn't really my business. That's
Never
between
your
them.
business.
And it's
What
actually kind of
anybody says
cute.
about you is not your business.
I see them as being me already. I'm like one with them. So I'm like, oh, we're working stuff
Mm-hmm.
out.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And you are one with everyone who you're interacting with. Whether you like the interaction or not, or you think it's a good interaction or bad interaction, those are all just judgments and opportunity for you to look at how you interact in the reflections of the outer to the inner. And it is really interesting, that people, I mean, she's in a very particular spot in the world given her fame. And the reason she's so famous is because we recognize a poet who does music and who speaks to the human interactions that we have and the hurts and the betrayals and the goodness and the evolution of consciousness.
Yeah, I mean,
You
talk
know,
about someone who's mastered the idea of people don't remember how perfect you were. They remember how you make them feel.
mhm. One of the things and she's very much about that and understands she's an entertainer and that that's her job. What got me involved with Taylor Swift is, and I can't remember what city she was in her Eras tours, but it showed up as a seismic event on the seismic measuring scale of wherever she was, that they thought that there was an earthquake and it was actually her stadium.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's super cool. That's an interesting, energetic expression. And and then I thought, how do you hit that attunement with 80,000 people? Because it's only 80,000. It's not like you've got 5 million. I would get that. 5 million people, drumming their feet. I'm in. But 80,000 and you get a seismic activity,
Mm-hmm.
that's interesting. That's something that I want to pay attention to because that's an energetic
Mm-hmm.
and a frequency that's amazing. And, like Chris Martin from Coldplay. So they're always on tour. They never are not on tour. They won't talk about being on tour. If you look at all their interviews, they won't talk about it at all, other than we're on tour. How long? We don't know. Where are you going next? We're not sure. I mean, they're very nebulous about it, but they know that they're getting a group of people together to have this experience and this vibrational frequency that they are achieving through their work, and that's unifying in some way. And I love that. It's not about them at all. They're getting to have fun and they're getting to express themselves. And if you look at Chris Martin's interviews, it's a lot about channeling. Like if you really delve deep, because I tend to go in a rabbit hole sometimes because I've got that kind of brain. He talks about that the music just comes in the middle of the night. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes he's 7 minutes and he writes a song, and sometimes it takes longer, whatever. And he has all these notes and whatever. And I'm sure you can relate to all of that. And that's a vibrational frequency.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, we are all artists,
Mm,
and it's only in this kind of reductionist derivative form of reality that we think that an artist is a particular path or occupation, but that's not true. We are all creators and we're all
mhm,
creating our own realities in different ways. Art
mhm,
does not look like one thing. And as someone who is kind of naturally attuned to the relationship of like being a conduit and being in tune with those moments of inspiration, because I'm a musician and songwriter, and that's like been my thing for a long time. I've written entire albums that I didn't really know what it was about until like years later, and I've written about concepts,
mhm,
quantum physics that I didn't know were even concepts. The best way I had to express this thing that I intuited was by way of melody and rhythm and poetry. And it's definitely something that you learn energetically how to just be attuned to and to listen and to let the song tell you what it wants to be. And I
mhm.
think the most prolific songwriters and entertainers, they understand that you have to remain authentic and you cannot look at success. And I think people like Chris Martin and Taylor Swift, again, regardless of how people feel about them, because there's a lot of people in the spiritual community that think of Taylor Swift as like an energy harvester, and they
Mhm.
think that she's evil. And I think that that's kind of a
Interesting.
funny thing for people who are spiritual to think. It's very judgmental and
Well, of
certain.
course. And it's part of the evolution of consciousness. There's a difference between judgment and discernment. And there's also a difference between liking it and not liking it. But what I love about art, and it's one of the degrees I have, is if it moves you to hate or love, it is doing its job.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are like, well, I could paint that. Well, then you should go home, get the paints, get the canvas. I loved Pollock for a long time and a lot of different other artists, Monet and stuff. And people were just like, I could do that. You should. Absolutely. I was never in an argument with them. Like they wanted me to argue about, well, this is better or right or wrong or good or bad. It's like, I don't see the world in that view. I
Hmm.
don't see it that way.
Yeah,
Um,
my favorite art to engage with is anything that is primitive or basic or simple that can be easily connected to, but like cathartic. So my favorite band of all time is a band called The White Stripes, and it's a two-piece band of an ex-husband and ex-wife pretending to be brother and sister. And she was never a drummer, but she's banging away on the drums. And he's a profound musician, but very bombastic and chaotic, frenetic. It doesn't bother him to hit bad notes, doesn't go on stage with a set list. And sometimes they have sloppy moments in their songs, but they also, like, I went to one of their concerts. It was one of my first big concerts when I was 14, and the energy in the room was just great because he was so attuned to what was happening in the room. And
right.
and that feels good. You don't have to be a prodigy or some kind of master at your craft, which there's nothing wrong with that either, but it is so subjective based on who connects with it.
There's lots of different ways to connect. You know, the God of the universe, the divine one, the energetic goodness of all of creation has given us all these options.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't have the options, we wouldn't know, you know, because we're in the creation.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it was limited, we wouldn't know it's limited. Um, and what's interesting too about really good artists, and I know you know this, bad notes are really part of the process. That's how you find the instrument, whether it's an instrument, or it's your voice. It's through the exploration of that. And we like to have kind of pablum given to us, that we're fed what we expect. And when we don't get what we expect, then we have all kinds of feelings about it, which is great. That's part of our humanity. And feeling mad about it or feeling frustrated with it or whatever because, it's sloppy. Giving birth to a baby is sloppy. I mean, like, holy goodness, really. You want to be in a room full of amazing energy with so much stuff going on and not enough things to mop it up with. Go to a birth. And we're always birthing. We're birthing ourselves. We're birthing our our thought process. We're birthing music. We're birthing, you know, uh, accounting, whatever we're doing. We're in the process of it. And
Mm-hmm.
then we don't let ourselves have the room to just explore and not judge. Really limits us and really makes it not fun to be an adult. And then
Yeah.
we want our kids to grow up and want to be us. It's like, well, you got to have more fun, boo, because they're looking at you and they're thinking, oh my God, mom and dad just don't look like they're having a good day and they haven't had a good one for 5 years. You have to find that energetic joy, that vibrational frequency inside yourself, and then connect to the world around you about it. With a fire. I mean, the fire people, and I wanted to address that a little bit. Yeah, because I'm one of those people who um I'm very independent, clearly, because I live way out in the country, that worries that no one will come to take care of whatever. And that's absolutely a lie. It's a lie that I learned from my childhood. Did people not help me in my childhood? Absolutely true. They did not. The adults were not capable of it, couldn't do it, didn't want to do it. We have 2,000 people in the town that I live outside of. We had 1,700 firefighters from all over the nation. And they would sit here at night when I'm sleeping to make sure that I didn't catch on fire.
Hmm.
And they're awake. And then I'd go out and try to give them coffee or electrolytes or whatever I had. And they were like, we're really good. We want you to keep your stuff. And I'm like, I'm serious. I don't know how to say thank you in the way that it would actually have an impact. So you have to take the electrolytes. You just have to. I'm going to throw them into your truck and then y'all can fish them out later or whatever. People are good. People help. People are there. You will have people show up. There is goodness in this world. There's goodness in the universe interacting with us. There's goodness
Mhm.
in God. It is a true thing. All you have to do is tune in. And we're the radio that's out of tune.
Mhm.
That's it. We're just a radio. And it's our
So
transmission.
my like natural disposition is pessimism, or at least that's where it was for a long time. I'll say that.
Yeah. We're gonna work
Um,
you out of that.
yeah, and I'm realizing that that's actually very far from. There's a lot of signs throughout my life that I'm actually such a high joy person. Very,
Mhm.
I'm calibrated for joy, but this place and these people have been kind of sucky to me at times. So,
Right.
when you're calibrated for joy and you're realizing you're not in a world that values joy for the sake of joy, you learn to manage your expectations. But I'm also learning that I don't have to manage anyone else's expectations. But
Well,
anyway,
and lower yourself to the expectations of what you were born into.
yeah. Well, the reason I set up what I'm about to ask that way is because I can imagine many people listening to this are deeply offended because there are some things happening in places around the world where people are being eradicated and
Mm,
they don't have any control over their reality except for
it's
small
true.
day-to-day things and what they're experiencing, and can be offensive to say like, well, children are losing their parents, whether they're being taken away by strange men who kidnap them off of the streets and being shipped all over the world to prison camps. What about those people? How do they manifest their reality? And how does this apply to what they're experiencing? And what does that have to do with us?
We're a part of the problem. I sat at a dinner the other day with someone who absolutely hated brown people. I didn't have the heart to tell her I was one of the brown people. And though I don't look brown, I am inside brown. And she went back to what had really freaked her out in 1975 or whatever. You have to help each other. I mean, we all have to help each other. Eventually, in that conversation, I said to her, I understand where you're coming from and your fears. And is that real today? But with what's happening, what you're describing, the parents being separated from their children and stuff, we have to stand up to that. It's not okay. And just because I'm not the parent that's being separated from my children, because I'm not that person, I need to go fight that. I need to say that's not okay. You can't do that. And I need to fight it in whatever way I can find a way of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if we sit, then they'll come for us. Whereas if we say, no, this is not how human beings behave. This is not what is okay. It's not okay for the kids. It's not okay for anything. It's not okay for this government. It's not okay for the war. It's not okay for the criminality of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
We have to stand up to it. And
Right.
it's hard. But are we going to be the people that just sit? Again, who are you going to be when you grow up? When you are 80? Are you going to be part of the problem and the silent, "Ah, can't be bothered, I'm so busy with whatever"? Or am I going to take action? In whatever way in my world, I think I can take action. And it's important because we're all one thing. We're all part of that thing. I'm a part of the lightning problem in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
I can pretend like I'm not. I haven't lived in Colorado my entire time, whatever. I'm still using water. All the kids on the planet, they're my kids.
Mm-hmm.
All the people on the planet that are suffering, they're my family. They're my people. They're part of who I am. And it's a huge reality check, one that a lot of us try to avoid because it just seems overwhelming. But just do the right thing in your right world or in your moment. Do that thing. Be a part of one or two or five things. And in that, if we all do that, we actually will have heaven on earth. I really believe that.
I believe that too, and I wholeheartedly agree. I think truly conscious and awakened beings are not content not to help.
Right.
It doesn't matter what religious institution one subscribes to. What matters is, are we helping?
And we're all connected. Whatever our religious institution, it's all connected. We're
Mm-hmm.
still on this blue marble
Mm-hmm.
hurtling through space. All of us. Period.
Yeah.
And how are we going to show up for that? And it doesn't have to be huge. People that I follow, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, a woman named Amma who lives in India now. I mean, there's Sai Baba, there's a lot of people. Um, they're one person doing amazing work. I mean, Mother Teresa was Armenian, I think, and changed the world. It took 9.5 years to become a sister of charity. And she started all of them with the lepers in India on the streets. You want to have a good reality check? There's a good one. So, and it doesn't mean you have to go to India to be the part of the world, but there's lots and lots of role models. There's lots of places. I encourage almost everyone I know to do volunteer work. Find a population you think is having a worse time than you are. I don't care who it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then help them. And now you're part of the family of man, woman, and you're participating. You're no longer a leaking piece. You're actually helping in the ways that you can. And, some days you don't want to get out of bed. I get it. Don't get out of bed that day. Or try to find a reason to get out of bed. Your kids need pancakes or whatever. And then do one more thing. And then honor yourself and take the time that you need to process whatever it is that makes you not want to get out of bed. So
Mm-hmm.
that that's not what's driving your life for the rest of your life. Because then you're back to the dash.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing so much of your experience and your wisdom with us today.
You're
I
so
might,
kind. Thank you, Rachel. I have had a very challenging life, and I'm really grateful for all of them. All of the challenges, I've had some pretty dark times, and they made me what you see today. Thank you.
yeah. In wrapping up in these next few minutes, just because I want to honor both of our times, is there any final thoughts on the work that you do that you would like to share, or just any add ons to anything we've talked about? Anything that is on your heart or spirit is bringing to mind?
Hmm. Not really. I really believe that people know kind of what's up. In those moments when we're starting to fall asleep at night and we kind of have that little moment where we're like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have said that, or wow, that was mean, or, I checked out, or whatever. We know. And what I would tell you is empower yourself to do something about it. And it doesn't matter if it's with me. It's, there's lots and lots of people on the planet like me everywhere who are helpful and want to be helpful. And if they're not helpful, then find someone else because there's lots of us here. And I believe that people intuitively know, we just don't listen. And I've learned to listen to my intuition by not listening to my intuition. And then, eating a little bit of dirt when I've got pushed face down into the ground. And then I'm like, huh, I had an intuition about this. I think the next time I'm probably going to listen to it. And that's where my wisdom comes from.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for making the space and place and time for these
Oh,
kinds of conversations.
I'm so glad that we got to have another one, and maybe you'll be a recurring guest. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't necessarily have a consistent intention for this space. I just really enjoy having conversations and hearing other people's insights and experiences, and really introducing and exploring the idea that there is so much more to reality than what we have been taught, what we've been told. And on intuition, I've been learning that too. I can trust my intuition a lot more than I think that I can, because we are all connected to a greater field of information.
We are.
And our awareness it's much more than we think it is. Like, we think we're limited to
Mhm.
our five senses, but there is a much deeper type of awareness. I call it like atomic awareness or molecular memory, that if we truly have the intention to seek, to understand, to know, to have particular insight as to which trajectory we should
Mhm.
go down, like what choice we should make,
Right.
we will interact with some kind of intelligent force, which we call God, source, the universe,
Our higher self,
consciousness.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And trusting that, and not only trusting that, but building a relationship with that, so that you try this thing and it works, and you try this thing and it works, and you try this thing and it doesn't work, and then you try this other thing and then that works. That's the progression.
Mm-hmm.
And not making yourself wrong. Just, oh, okay, whoops. It didn't, I got off track a little bit, or, I didn't trust this and I should have trust whatever. Just allow yourself to play. There's
Mm-hmm.
a word in spiritual, it's a Hindu word that says lila. It's play. It's the play of consciousness. And
Leela?
you're in it. I love that
That's
word.
so interesting. My word for gratitude, and it's just a personal word that I chose for me, is Leilani, which
Ah,
is a Hawaiian word. And for me, my connection to that, number one, I had a dream years ago that I gave birth to a daughter, and in the dream, I named her Leilani. And I
nice.
always held on to that, thinking, oh, I'm going to have a daughter someday, and I have to name her that. But I've had multiple dreams where I've had multiple daughters, always a daughter. And in the dream, I always have a name that I'm given. And so I have these different words that have very deep and ancient meanings that I don't know where I consciously would have grabbed that from. So it's coming from some other field of awareness. But Leilani for me is actively receiving the beauty that is meant for me, which, every sunset, every star, every beautiful cloud, every flower, that is beauty that creator put there just for me to see it.
And so maybe the birthing is you. Maybe you're the one that you're birthing.
I love that. There's so many different cool metaphors for the
Yeah,
birthing that I think, yeah, I go to endless places thinking of like how to interpret dreams.
I
There's so
love
many
it.
different ways.
There are so
Alrighty.
many different ways. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day, and it's always wonderful to see your face and to chat with you.
Same.
All
I look
right.
forward to it again. Bye.
Bye.